Vivian Monroe returned to Savannah after 14 long years, expecting warmth, memories, and maybe the familiar sound of her daughter's laughter. She unlocked the door to the mansion she once gave as a gift, believing she was walking back into a home, not a silence that felt abandoned. The house was grand, still beautiful, still polished like old wealth, but what greeted her was not joy, nor surprise, nor even recognition. It was the faint sound of water touching the floor. Vivian's footsteps echoed down the hallway, each one slow, controlled, trying to steady the sudden weight forming inside her chest. She followed the sound, expecting a cleaner or a repair worker, maybe someone hired during her absence. Instead, she froze. Amelia Monroe, her only child, was on her knees. She held a mop in both hands, dragging it back and forth across the marble with the kind of tired rhythm that came from repetition, not choice. Her hair was dull, pulled back without care. Her shoulders slumped inward like she had been shrinking for years. Vivian stared, unable to form a word. She had worked double shifts, saved every penny, and built a better life so Amelia would never have to kneel for anyone. Yet here Amelia was, kneeling anyway, not in a stranger's house, but in her own. No one noticed Vivian enter, no welcome, no smile, just the sound of a mop and a daughter too quiet to remember she once belonged to light. Vivian had come home and found her child living like she owned nothing at all. Vivian Monroe was 56, though life had carved its marks into her gently rather than harshly. Years of working behind salon chairs left her with steady hands and a calm voice people trusted. Before she left for London, she was known for turning ordinary hair into something beautiful, something confident. She built her life from nothing, endured late nights, rented rooms she could barely afford, and saved until she bought this mansion outright, a gift for her daughter, a foundation of love made tangible. She had imagined Amelia thriving here. She pictured sunlight through tall windows, dinner with friends, maybe laughter echoing off the staircase after a long workday. But the woman kneeling with the mop was not the Amelia she remembered. Amelia Monroe had once been vibrant, bold, endlessly curious. She used to hum without thinking, dance while cooking breakfast, and dreamed of opening her own design studio. But now her movements were small, cautious. She looked older than her age, as if life had been draining from her slowly, day after day. Even the way she breathed felt quiet, like she was trying not to exist too loudly. Then there was Grant Whitaker. Vivian had never disliked him openly. When Amelia married him, Vivian wanted to believe love sometimes arrived in unexpected shapes. Grant was charming in public, well-spoken and confident, the kind of man who knew how to win a room. But beneath that polish, Vivian sensed something she didn't name: a strain of entitlement, subtle but sharp. He was the sort of man who enjoyed being the center, even when no one asked for a son. And his mother, Lorraine Whitaker, stood just behind him like shadowed silk. Sweet-voiced, warm in the beginning, generous with compliments, but too quick to pick apart a weakness if she found one. Vivian was home again. But none of them looked happy she returned. Vivian took a slow step forward, suitcase wheels rolling softly behind her. She waited for Amelia to notice, to lift her head, to smile the way she used to when her mother walked through any door. Instead, Amelia only paused for a second, glanced briefly at Vivian, and returned to scrubbing the floor, as if nothing about this moment was unusual. Vivian's heart dropped like a stone into cold water. Before she could speak, a voice floated from the living room, deep, relaxed, almost bored. Grant Whitaker. He sat on the velvet sofa with one arm draped along the back like a man who owned everything he touched. A glass of bourbon sat on the coffee table, half finished, ice melting slowly. His shoes were off, legs stretched out comfortably, like this was his family estate, and not the house purchased by his wife's mother. Lorraine Whitaker was beside him, filing her nails with absent precision. Her jewelry gleamed under the chandelier, and her perfume carried through the room even from across the hall. She didn't turn, didn't greet, just spoke one sentence directed at Amelia, not at Vivian. "Move the bucket, darling, you're splashing the rug." Amelia flinched, nodded quietly, and pushed the bucket further away. No one asked why Vivian was here. No one offered a hello. No one acted surprised that the woman who paid for every brick, every tile, every chandelier, was now standing in her own entryway, like an intruder. Vivian wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but her voice stayed trapped behind shock. She noticed the slight tremble in Amelia's fingers, the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she avoided eye contact like eye contact could get her punished. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Vivian had expected joy. She received silence instead. And silence in that house felt louder than any scream could have been. Vivian finally stepped closer, crossing the distance between her and Amelia. She wanted to hug her, to lift her from the floor, to ask why her daughter's hands were raw and damp instead of holding a paintbrush like they once did. But when she knelt beside her, Amelia flinched, a small, automatic recoil, the kind of movement someone learns from consequence, not preference. Vivian whispered her name. No anger, no demand, just recognition. Amelia glanced up, only for a moment. There was no brightness in her eyes, no spark of the girl who once planned color palettes and sketched dress seams over morning coffee. Her gaze was tired, almost hollow, like sleep had not belonged to her for a very long time. "Mom," she breathed, barely audible, like the word itself might get her in trouble. From the living room, Grant's voice cut through the air. "Break time's over, Amelia. The dining room isn't going to clean itself." Vivian's head snapped toward him. Grant didn't even look up. He swirled his bourbon lazily, indifferent, as if ordering his wife to scrub floors was as ordinary as asking for salt at dinner. Lorraine crossed her legs and continued filing her nails, not one flicker of discomfort passing her painted face. Vivian stood. Her pulse pounded like a warning drum. She noticed then faint bruising along Amelia's wrist, partially hidden beneath the sleeve. A small wince when she reached for the bucket, the silence when she obeyed. Grant wasn't just treating her daughter like staff. Someone had stripped Amelia of choice, of voice, of the simple right to slow down and breathe. Vivian had worked decades to ensure her child would never kneel for anyone. And here she was kneeling in the house she legally owned. Vivian refused to look away this time. She stepped past Amelia, past the mop and bucket, and into the living room where Grant and Lorraine sat like royalty in a kingdom they hadn't built. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't need to. Her presence alone carried history, sacrifice and ownership. Grant finally lifted his eyes toward her, slow and unbothered. "Well," he said, tone dry, "look who finally decided to show up." Vivian didn't answer. She glanced at the bourbon glass, the relaxed posture, the ease of a man who feared nothing in a house that wasn't his. Lorraine smiled politely, the kind of smile used to dismiss, not welcome. Grant leaned forward, reached for a folder on the coffee table and tapped it with 2 fingers. "Since you're here, you may as well take a look," he said. "Amelia signed over the property months ago. We didn't think you'd mind." Vivian's breath caught. He opened the folder and slid a document toward her, the deed, stamped and notarized, with Amelia's signature curling weakly across the bottom. It looked like her handwriting, but something was wrong. Vivian had watched her daughter sign documents her entire life. Amelia's handwriting was confident, looping, graceful. This signature trembled. Like it belonged to someone exhausted. Someone pressured. And someone afraid to say no. "What did you gain from this?" Vivian asked quietly. "A home? A title? Power?" Grant smirked. "Responsibility, actually. Someone has to run things around here." Lorraine added, "Amelia was more than willing, dear. A wife should contribute however she can." Vivian's fingers tightened against the back of the sofa. She looked across the room to her daughter, who stood still beside the bucket, head lowered like the deed was a scar she learned to live with. Vivian had hoped she was wrong. But the proof lay on paper, bold, legal, irreversible on the surface. Her daughter hadn't just been forced to clean floors. She had been forced to sign away the life Vivian built for her. Vivian asked Amelia to step outside with her, just for a moment, just far enough that Grant and Lorraine's eyes could no longer hover over every word. They moved to the side corridor near the staircase, where light filtered softly through stained glass and silence felt safer. Amelia held the mop like she didn't know what to do with her hands if she let it go. Vivian gently slid it from her fingers, set it aside and waited. No pressure, no rush. Only space, something Amelia seemed to have forgotten she deserved. Minutes passed before Amelia spoke. "It happened last winter," she whispered. "I got sick. Fever chills, I could barely stand. Grant said I was being dramatic and needed to toughen up. I collapsed in the kitchen 2 days later." Vivian felt every word like a blade drawn slowly. "When I woke up, they had papers ready," Amelia continued. Grant said it was temporary. Just until I recovered, he said. Good wives show trust. Good wives sign without question. Her voice trembled, and I was so tired. I just wanted the pain to stop. I signed because saying no felt dangerous. Vivian closed her eyes. Amelia's breathing grew uneven, memory flooding back in broken pieces. She spoke of nights sleeping on a thin mattress under the stairs because Grant claimed the master bedroom was for people who earned comfort. She described meals given only when chores were finished, and the way Lorraine reminded her that she was lucky to be kept at all. He said love means obedience, Amelia muttered, and I believed him for too long. Vivian reached out, but Amelia flinched again, not away from her, but like her body still expected punishment. Vivian's heart cracked wider than any deed could measure. Bruises fade, paper can be challenged, but the quiet fear behind a daughter's eyes, that was the kind of damage that required rebuilding from the soul outward. Vivian lifted Amelia's chin gently so their eyes met. You were never theirs to break, she said softly. You don't need permission to stand. For the first time since she arrived, Vivian wasn't just horrified. She was ready. Vivian did not leave the house that night. She stayed, not as a guest and not as someone seeking permission, but as a mother reclaiming space, not with shouting, not with chaos, but with presence. A presence Grant could not ignore forever. Morning arrived quietly. Amelia was already in the kitchen, preparing breakfast like routine was the only language she remembered. Lorraine sat at the dining table with a newspaper she barely read. Grant moved through the hallway with the confidence of a man who believed nothing could touch him. Then came the knock. 3 firm strikes against the front door. It was early, too early for visitors, too early for deliveries, too early for anything ordinary. Grant frowned, irritation cutting across his relaxed facade. Lorraine stiffened, eyes narrowing, as if she sensed something shifting beneath the surface. Vivian's pulse steadied, not racing, not panicked, simply ready. Grant opened the door. 2 uniformed deputies from the Chatham County Sheriff's Department stood outside, badges visible, posture solid. Behind them, a court officer held a folder thick enough to mean trouble. Grant Whitaker? The lead deputy asked. Grant straightened. That's me. What's me? What's this about? The deputy handed him a document. Court order to freeze the property and accounts associated with Amelia Whitaker. A preliminary investigation has been opened regarding coercion, property transfer under duress, and domestic endangerment. Lorraine's hand froze mid-air. Amelia stopped breathing. Grant laughed short, disbelieving. This has to be a mistake. The deputy's voice did not shift. We need to speak with Amelia directly. Alone, if she prefers. Vivian felt the air change, slow and powerful, like a storm gathering without wind. Amelia hesitated, eyes darting toward Grant as if waiting for permission she no longer owed him. Then she stepped forward, sleeve tugged accidentally just high enough to reveal a faded bruise along her wrist. The deputy saw it. Ma'am, he said gently, would you allow us to document that injury? Amelia nodded, small, fragile but hers. Grant's face drained of color. And in that moment, power moved. The deputies requested to see Amelia's living arrangements as part of their initial assessment. Grant stepped forward quickly, trying to guide them toward the master bedroom as if presentation could rewrite truth, but one deputy lifted a hand. We'll let Amelia show us where she sleeps. Grant froze. Vivian watched something shift behind his eyes, not anger first, but panic, subtle and sharp. Lorraine set down her newspaper a little too slowly, her painted smile no longer able to stretch wide enough to cover the moment. Amelia hesitated, her gaze flicked toward the staircase, then to the narrow door beneath it. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her feet took the deputies there. The door opened with a soft creak. The space was barely larger than a walk-in closet, walls close enough to touch with both hands outstretched. There was no bed, only a thin mattress on the floor, a folded blanket, and a small plastic drawer that held lotion, pain relievers, and a single pair of socks. Next to the mattress sat a bucket of cleaning supplies. No window, no light switch inside. Only a pull-chain bulb overhead that buzzed faintly like it resented being turned on. Vivian stood in the doorway, swallowing something thick and painful. She remembered Amelia sewing pillowcases in high school, because she liked everything soft and colorful. Now she slept on a surface thinner than kindness. The deputy's voice was quiet but firm. Mr. Whitaker, is this where your wife sleeps? Grant didn't answer. He didn't need to. Silence did what words couldn't. Revealed everything. Amelia did not defend him. She simply stood there, hands clasped gently in front of her like a person scheduling grief. For the first time, though, she didn't bow her head. She looked at them directly. Steady. Small, but present. Vivian placed a hand on the doorframe. This wasn't just a room. It was the crime made visible. What happened next did not feel fast, it felt inevitable. While one deputy remained with Amelia, the second stepped outside to radio the Financial Crimes Division already stationed nearby. Within minutes, 2 plainclothes investigators entered the house with calm urgency, carrying a binder so thick it looked heavy even before it opened. They laid it on the dining table. Inside were statements, transfers, and flagged account activities tied not to Amelia, but to Grant and Lorraine. Money traced from the sale of Amelia's salon, her dream. Her livelihood funneled into personal accounts, labeled as medical support. Thousands of dollars withdrawn under Lorraine's name, each transaction linked to a supposed treatment plan, yet not one hospital invoice existed to match it. No prescriptions. No oncology records. No doctor's visits. No chemotherapy appointments. Only lies detailed in ink. Lorraine stood stiff, fingers twitching near her pearls. Grant's jaw pulsed, as if clenching reality into denial could erase what was already written. The deputy turned to Amelia. Did you authorize these payments? Amelia shook her head, voice barely above breath. No, I didn't even know the account was open. That was enough. Grant reached for Amelia's arm, desperate to regain control, but Vivian stepped forward before he touched her. He froze not because she pushed him back, but because for the first time Amelia didn't step away from her mother. She stood beside Vivian. The lead investigator closed the binder and nodded to the deputies. Grant Whitaker, Lorraine Whitaker, you are both under arrest for financial exploitation, coercion, and property transfer obtained under duress. The driveway became a stage, neighbors watching from porches as handcuffs closed, metal clicking final. Grant swore, Lorraine cried, but the law did not flinch. Amelia did not collapse. She breathed deeply, like someone tasting oxygen after years underwater. When the patrol car pulled away, red and blue lights fading against the curve of the street, the house felt impossibly quiet. Not empty, just free of tension, like walls that once braced for impact could finally rest. Amelia stood in the foyer, not clutching a mop, not waiting for direction, just standing. Still, herself, or at least the beginning of herself. Vivian guided her upstairs, not to the closet space under the stairs, not to the hallway where she scrubbed floors, but to the master bedroom she was meant to have. Sunlight spilled across the comforter like something welcoming, something warm. Amelia hesitated at the threshold, not sure she deserved to cross it, until Vivian gently placed a hand between her shoulder blades. You do not earn a bed by being perfect, she said. You earn it by being human. Amelia sat slowly, fingers brushing the soft fabric as if softness was a language she was relearning. Vivian opened a drawer and found old memories photo albums, fabric samples Amelia once stitched into dress designs, a journal filled with bright ideas paused halfway through a page, things Grant never cared to read, but Vivian always did. They stayed there a long time, no rush, no core list waiting, just breath steady, fragile but growing stronger. Later that evening, Vivian prepared dinner beside Amelia, not out of duty but out of choice. 2 women side by side, reclaiming space one small decision at a time. Before they ate, Vivian took her daughter's hand. You are not broken, she said, only interrupted, and interruptions can end. Amelia nodded, a tear falling not from fear but relief. Vivian knew healing would take time, but tonight her daughter was no longer silent, no longer invisible, no longer on her knees. She was seated at her own table. And that was a beginning. My name is Nora Bennett, and 3 months ago I was standing behind the counter of a small roadside